It's crazy, but I think I'm actually starting to get used to it here. I feel like something inside of me has changed. It's almost like Wait, you're probably wondering what the heck I'm talking about. What is this weird looking deer thing saying now? Well, let me explain. About 8 months ago, early March, I was wandering around searching for lunch in the forest near my sleeping tree, a normal routine for me. Then, out of nowhere, I feel an intense prick on the side of my thigh, and before I could look down, I completely blacked out. So, anyways, I woke up from my deep sleep, let's call it, to a rumbling noise. I was on one of those train things, I guess that's what they're called. I'm gonna say I was on that train for about 3 hours. The ground seemed to get bumpier than it already was. The train began to rumble, even more than usual. The rumbling sound got extremely intense, to the point that my head was hurting. All of a sudden, we went over a big bump, and the side of the train slid open, and I went flying out, and I landed hard against a cold, hard ground. Once I opened my eyes, the train I had been on was nowhere to be found. This land was nothing like I was used to. It was snowy, and the frost was biting my nose and ears. Ever since that day, I've been alone to fend for myself in the strange white lands of the Hudson's Bay lowlands. Those next few days mostly consisted of me walking in no set direction while freezing my butt off. Although, something interesting did happen yesterday during my walk to nowhere. I met a bear. This bear wasn't like the brown or black bears back at home. This one was white. White lambs, white bear, I guess that makes sense. The bear's name was Tika. She brought me to her cave where I met her cubs. Tika provided me with food and shelter. I hardly ate any of the food because it was an animal and I wasn't really used to eating that. I remember that I really liked it there at Tika's. I stayed for quite a while before I continued my journey. While I was at Tika's, I began to start eating meat. It was very uncomfortable the first time, but I was eating it in very small portions and it wasn't making me sick or anything. So it really helped me survive because there weren't many plants where I was. Then I began to notice my teeth getting sharper because it began to get a lot easier to eat meat. So I left Tika's house early in the morning. She told me to walk south in order to reach a lush green land, so I set off on my journey. I arrived in the green land, I guess. Except it wasn't very green. I mean, maybe it could have been in the past, but all the plants were pretty dead. Then, out of nowhere, I was attacked by a wolf. I hadn't done anything to him, but he was so mad at me for no apparent reason, he bit my tail right off me. The next morning, I met a small rabbit. He claimed to be a doctor. He said that he could help me with my tail. He pulled out a wolf tail and pressed it against my open wound. He told me it would take a few days to heal and to take it easy. Over those next few days, many different animals told me that the plants aren't growing because the nitrogen cycle is down, and all the omnivores will die because of it. And those animals ended up being right. And if it had gotten any worse, then it would have affected everyone. The whole ecosystem relies on the plants. The omnivores eat the plants, and the carnivores eat the omnivores, and the carnivores produce fertilizer for the plants to keep growing. It was a complete disaster. I needed to do something. At the edge of the pond, there is a huge rock. I stood up on that rock and said, "Excuse me." No one listened to me. In my loudest voice, I said, "Excuse me." All the pond animals stopped swimming. The rabbits and the birds stopped and looked up at me. The wolves and the bears stopped in their tracks. All attention was on me. It took me a few seconds to figure out what I was going to say, but then I said it. I know I only recently arrived here, but I've noticed that we are going crazy. We need to smarten up and start working together to get our environment back to the way it was. Oh wait, and remember that rabbit who helped me with my tail? Yeah, he climbed up onto the rock too, and he said, "We need the nitrogen cycle back into our ecosystem." The entire crowd was silent. No one knew what the nitrogen cycle was. "The thing that keeps the plants growing and happy," the rabbit said, and the crowd understood. First, we must make fire. So the community of animals worked together to gather rocks and dry leaves, if there were any to be found. And we began to rub rocks against each other. After about 10 minutes, we started up a good-sized fire. Next, we needed a carbon-rich material, like plants. We didn't have much of them, but everyone looked in their dens to see if there was any to be found. We ended up finding just enough to burn. Half of us kept putting dry leaves into the fire, while the other half held small nuts that the birds had found as an alkaline solution. We did that until sundown. We woke up the next morning to the smell of fresh air. The plants were green and lush, and everything felt normal again. Our ecosystem had finally gone back to the way it was supposed to be.